Okay, this patch is kinda rough. Outside of the banner of new characters, we also have some pretty good looking side banners this time that are actually worth considering. If you're a free-to-play player that have limited pool, it's best to ignore all of them and just focus on Flutter Page and Fatutu over the next two patches. But if you do have some extra pools to spend, I want to go over two special banners this patch: the Ripple of Water banner, aka the Euphoria banner, and the Scam banner, featuring Mercuria and Kakania. Before we get into those though, let's first look at the new characters this patch, and since I didn't make a full guide for Willow, I'll also go a little bit more in depth on her with this video. There is no easy way to say this: if you don't have Tuesday, Willow is not worth pulling. Tuesday triples Willow's damage output, and without Tuesday, she just doesn't perform very well as a DPS. Right now, the Poison team is significantly stronger than 37 in terms of dealing Genesis damage. During Tuesday's array, you can comfortably hit 2000 to 3000% Genesis damage per turn, completely shredding enemies regardless of their defense. The rotation itself is also very straightforward. There are 4 key things to focus on for her rotation. First, to start the rotation, you will need enough Moxie to get both Willow and Tuesday's ultimate ready. Second, you want to use Willow's ultimate one turn before Tuesday's if possible. And while both ultimates are active, you want to max out Hacksbane to 10 stacks on the target as fast as possible. Then stop using skill 1 to not waste poison. You also want to use skill 2 every single turn when possible to detonate Hackspan, and also try to maintain Tuesday's debuff. And lastly, you want to make sure Willow's ultimate ends at the same time as Tuesday's array by using maybe around 2 actions per turn for massive explosive damage. Now, I really like the poison playstyle. There is something satisfying about stacking and detonating damage over time effect. But as fun and as strong as this team is, there is something important that I want to address. Bluepock is actively limiting Poison team in Reveries. They are already weak in Control Heavy and Anti-Moxie stages since their entire rotation relies on ultimates. But in some of the harder Reverie fights where ultimates ain't banned, they've straight up slapped on minus 100% or minus 80% Genesis damage taken on the enemy, just to nerf the Poison team's effectiveness. So if you're thinking Poison as a universal solution for tough content, it's unfortunately not. Will this trend continue? It's hard to say, but as far as 350 meter and 400 meter stage is concerned, things aren't looking that great. Now let's move on to Flutter Page. To put it simply, she's broken. If you care about meta, do not skip her. Flutter Page is a very special support because she brings 3 major things to the table. First, she's one of the only character that can add an action point to your team. At P0, this effect only lasts 1 turn, but it's still free damage. And when Liangyue arrives in a future patch, this ability gets even better since Liangyue can extend buff durations, which also work on Flutter Page's action point buff. On top of that, she adds an unhit effect to all of her allies' attacks. At first, this might not seem like much, but it's extremely useful for enemies that only takes 1 damage per hit, because just like Genesis damage, this effect is counted as a separate instance of damage. But the real reason she's so powerful is her insane damage buff. In a well-built follow-up attack team, she can easily provide over 100% damage bonus and guarantee crits effect to the entire team. There is just one catch though: this effect only apply to follow-up attacks. This means characters who don't rely on follow-up attack won't benefit from her buff. But that's really not an issue because we are in a follow-up meta right now, and there are tons of characters that can use her effectively. She works perfectly with Zhu, Anjunala, and Liangyue, 3 true limited characters who specialize in follow-up attacks. Anjunala in particular benefit the most because she can deal 100% of her damage as follow-up, including her ultimate. She's also amazing with Wind Sound because, well, Wind Sound. Now, aside from the obvious follow-up teams, there are 2 less talked about teams that can also use Flutter Page effectively. The first is J Babel Flutter Page in 37. With Babel's Euphoria, Jay and Babel can now sustain the team without a healer, and since Jay is consistently triggering counters, Flutter Page provides even more damage bonus with her stacks, which is generated when Alan takes any action. Her buff ain't just limited to normal damage either, they also apply to Genesis damage, so 37 actually gets a huge boost in the setup, as she procs her follow-up consistently in the Jay Babel combo and Flutter Page make her hit significantly harder. The second team is Impromptu's Incantation team, which looks a little weird at first glance because Impromptu's Incantation attack don't count as follow-ups, so they don't get the damage bonus. Well, the truth is, Flutter Page brings so much utility in other ways that she earns a slot in the team anyway. For starters, the team needs to generate inspiration by spending Eureka, and no one generates and spends Eureka faster than Flutter Page. She directly contributes to the team's overall damage just by keeping the flow going. On top of that, her extra action point is incredibly useful here, since the team rely on inspiration. Getting one extra action per turn means one more chance to use a card attached by inspiration. So yeah, unironically, Flutter Page is one of the best picks for Impromptu's Incantation teams, even though her buff don't directly apply. At the end of the day though, if you care about maximizing your damage at all, do not skip Flutter Page, she is that good. Now that we have covered the new characters, let's finally look at the two special banners this patch. First up, the Ripples on the Water banner, or the Euphoria banner. Now, unironically, for newer players who have extra pulls, this banner is insanely good. Yes, you can technically get these characters by losing a 50-50, but the standard pull is so large now that the odds of pulling a specific character are pretty low. This banner is also much better than it looks at first glance. Unlike the scam banners, this one shares pity with future Ripples on the Water banner as well, which is a huge deal. And even more importantly, you can't lose your first 50-50 on the banner, making it significantly cheaper overall if you're targeting someone. For newer players who are still missing key defensive options, Sotheby is the best pickup here. Euphoria Sotheby will carry you through a ton of tough content with her insane sustain. That being said, I'd highly recommend waiting for Flutter Page's banner first. In my opinion, Flutter Page takes priority over all of the Euphoria characters. If you need both, you're probably not ready for the harder stages of Reveries anyway, so it makes more sense to go for Flutter Page first and then consider the Euphoria banner afterwards. Also, if you want a deeper breakdown of the character featured on this banner, check out my recent video where I go over each of them after Euphoria and what they bring to the table. Now, let's talk about the scam banner. But this time, it's actually not that bad. For the first time ever, both characters on the banner are S+ tier, which makes it a lot more tempting than usual. That being said, this is still a scam banner, meaning there is no guarantee which of the two characters you'll get. You'll also still have the 30% chance to lose your 6-star pull to a non-rate up character, so there is definitely some risk involved. However, for anyone missing both Mercuria and Cacania, this is actually a great chance to add one of the best defensive support or one of the best offensive support to your team. If you are planning to pull for this banner, there is one thing to keep in mind. There is no specific pity for a single character. That means you could end up with multiple copies of one character while never pulling the other. Because of that, I'd personally call it quits after getting one of the two. Unless you're well, then you can stop instead after reaching a specific portrait milestone on one of the two characters. And that pretty much covers everything for this patch's banner. And now I want to hear from you. Are you pulling on any of these banners, or are you skipping and saving for later? And which characters or Euphoria are you most excited about for the upcoming patch? Let me know in the comments down below. As always, this has been SteamedBunX. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.